dress me, Alan?
All I have is the jacket.
Matt outdressed me with the shoes.
Well, that usually happens.
Are you doing sexy lumberjack today, Sampson?
It's naturally what I go for. Just contemporary.
This just in, I've got dabs for days. Are you up on the dab craze?
No.
Okay.
If it doesn't involve shit 15-year-old girls are into, I don't know from it.
Welcome to Big Words I Know by Heart, a program of rants, raves, faves, pet peeves, personal vendettas, celebrity interviews, and anything else we can fill the half hour with. My guest today pens a commentary column for the Daily Public. He obtained a poli-sci degree in 1990 from Boston University and his law degree from Pace in 94. He's a restaurant reviewer for Buffalo Spree, a practicing lawyer, and the owner-operator, blogger-in-chief of Buffalo Pundit. He's also fluent in his native Croatian. I don't always agree with his views, but I love the eloquence he executes while writing them. The defense rests this evening. That's corny. With the always opinionated, often imitated, and never duplicated Alan Bedenko in the studio. A little round of applause.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Joining me in the co-host hot seat is an avid Buffalo Bisons fan and a political animal in his own right who follows the debates on his mobile phone, the Mighty Matt Sampson.
All of those things are correct.
And you brought some homework. You brought prepared questions, Sampson. I'm proud of you.
Well, try
Wow.
to show up prepared.
I'm totally unprepared.
Hey, that's what we want.
I've done no preparation whatsoever.
I think you're always ready.
No, not always, but
Down to debate?
well, I'm
DTD?
as a lawyer. Part of my job is to be able to kind of bullshit my way through just about anything. So hopefully I'll be able to do that.
This will be a good time.
Yeah,
Are you ready for this line of questioning?
I'll try.
What level of involvement do you think that Joe Sixpack and Susie Q. Public should have in local and national government?
In government,
Yes.
I think that their role as voters, informed voters, and possibly, party committee people or things like that are the best way for Joe Sixpack and I forget the name of the other one.
Susie Q. Public.
Yeah, I don't know that ethnicity. For them to be involved in sort of retail local politics. Mm-hmm. But keeping informed, I think, is the most important thing.
Staying aware and informed and fighting back.
Well, you don't always have to fight back. It's nice when you don't have to fight back. It's nice when you can just sort of sit back and be satisfied with what's going on in government. And sometimes locally, we've been pleased enough to be able to do that lately, which is kind of nice. It's a nice change from 10 years ago.
True. You, sir, are not exactly a shrinking violet when it comes to trolls in your comment sections.
No.
How early on did you adopt this policy and why?
From the get-go, because who do they think they are? If I'm going to write something that's going to be opinionated and not, I don't want to say controversial because that makes it sound as if, people are paying attention. And I don't always assume that they are. Mm-hmm. But if I'm going to write something that's opinionated or that takes a particular viewpoint and argues it, then I welcome people who argue back at me up to a point. If it becomes, an ad hominem attack or something like that, then I kind of tend to shut it down. But yeah, no, from day one, I had trolls.
They are lousy on that internet.
Yeah.
Sampson, I'm kind of intrigued to see what questions you have.
Well, I think I got one to open us up.
Go for it.
So what do you put the odds at Romulus running for president in 2016, and could just about anyone pass Jeb Bush at this point?
He's trying to coin his own terminology.
Romulus?
As in Romney.
I think Jeb Bush's biggest problem is that his last name is Bush. And if you recall in 2008, when the financial collapse happened, even Republicans and conservatives were very, very quick to throw his older brother under the bus. So I don't think there's a lot of love lost between conservatives and Jeb Bush. I think Jeb Bush is a tertiary tier candidate this year, which is pretty amazing given where he came from.
Right.
But it's also, you're talking about a party that's completely lost its mind. And Jeb is
Absolutely.
And he's a pretty intelligent guy.
Yeah.
So those two things aren't going to mesh. I think of all the Republicans that I think make any sense right now, it's John Kasich. and he's not going to go anywhere.
You had a pretty vicious tweet about, holy shit, who was it, Rand Paul, that I read during the research.
What did I read?
Rand Paul supporters being Wegmans Magic the Gathering.
Which is funny because I actually saw that day.
Are you kidding me?
No, I was in Wegmans and there were kids, probably about, I would say, 17 years old, playing Magic the Gathering cards. And they were in the back of the Wegmans, the new one on Transit that they just redid. There's a pub and all that cool stuff, yes. Right? Well, in the back, they have a little kids area for kids to play. And on it was, I think it was Doc McStuffins or La La Loopsy, I think was the show. I'm
very well familiar with Doc McStuffins.
My daughter had to correct me. I said Doc McStuffins, and I think she said no, it was La La Loopsy. Either way, here are these grown adults playing a card game under a show for toddlers, and in all of my online interactions, thank God there haven't been a lot of personal interactions, but in all my online interactions with the sort of libertarians like Jim Ostrowski and those guys who really love Ron Paul and Rand Paul, that's the image that they convey to me.
Jim's still kicking around?
I don't know what he's up to. I haven't seen him. He writes, horrible books about how, communist.
You are not afraid to go for it, and that's what I like about it.
Well, they are. I mean, it's like, what is it? Government schools are bad for your kids. I think that's his latest book, or some bullshit like that. Who knows? But yeah, it's all garbage. It's just nonsense. It's but they don't have their web presence that they used to do. It's not as much fun anymore. It used to be fun when I could go, kick them around a little bit.
Are you ready for the hard-hitting questions, my friend?
Sure.
Who do you root for on the hit Netflix political soap opera House of Cards? And do you have any predictions for the new season in March?
I would love to tell you all about that, except I stopped watching this most recent season after maybe the second episode.
You tapped out? I
tapped out. I don't know why. I think we just... I honestly, I don't have an excuse for it. I don't have an excuse or a reason. But I love the show. I love the premise of the show. But I only have a vague recollection of what happened towards the end of season 2. I started, I think it's season 3, right?
Yeah.
Season 3, I started the first couple of episodes and then, just got out of it. I don't know why. I couldn't give you a reason. But I root for his... I think the most compelling character on that show is his chief of staff, whose name escapes me. Mm-hmm. But that guy, to me, is the most interesting character on that show.
Sampson?
Sorry?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
He's the fixer. He has to fix all the problems. He's the guy who really does the meat and potatoes stuff of what Frank Underwood needs to gain his power and to maintain his power. And that's the most interesting character, I think.
The relationship between those two, the character himself?
Both.
Sampson, predictions?
Going into next season, I don't want to reveal any spoilers. I've seen a couple things floating around the web, though.
There's a teaser.
See, I've been totally into just British comedies lately. I can't get into dramas.
And X-Files.
You know what? I tapped out of that too. It was just on too late because of the fucking football game. Well, I mean, come on. Listen, if Fox is gonna put out the X-Files for the first time in whatever it is, 15 years. No, it was like more than that, 18 maybe years.
The landmark event for some.
Not only that, but I mean, Mulder wasn't even on the last season. I think, right? So this is like this is the reunion, and people really care about it. How do you schedule a football game that's going to go like an hour over on the night that your like marquee program that kind of puts your network on the map is coming back for the first time in almost 20 years? That was astonishing to me. And then they had to have a wrap-up show. Mm-hmm. And I don't need to know. I don't need some.
I was watching Heidi on Channel 7.
Who's Heidi?
The Heidi game? Nobody. That was a horrible joke that nobody got. Okay, we're moving on. Donald Trump is a sensationalistic simpleton who says whatever he thinks the majority of voters want to hear, regardless of any personal beliefs he may or may not be cognitively capable of having. Agree or disagree? Do you honestly think he has a chance of winning? And how is this somehow worse than anyone else who gets that far up the campaign food chain?
I would object at this point because there's more than one question on the table. But
well put, sir.
As far as him being, I think you used the word charlatan, who says what he thinks people want to hear. I think that there's a degree of truth to that, but I think that's only part of the story. Do I think he has a chance of winning the nomination? I do. Do I think he has a chance of winning in November? I don't. But I think he's more sinister than just, the guy who's just saying stuff that people want to hear. I think that there's more evil behind it than just that.
Would you care to expound on that a little? Any suspicions you don't want to...
Well, yeah, I don't think you have to go much further than looking at who supports him vocally. Like, if I was a Trump supporter and I saw that the American Nazi Party was really into his campaign, I would take a look at that and sort of take a step back and maybe assess my support of his candidacy. If this group of people is really excited about him, and you saw the girls dancing around in Pensacola, doing the little, and they were referring to him as our leader. Okay, that shit's scary. That's wrong. And when you combine, our leader with a little North Korean dance that these girls did, and then the whole "we're going to keep Muslim out" thing, and Mexicans are rapists, and whatever, all of that thing, all of those things put together is far more sinister than just, oh, I'm going to say something and you guys are going to say, damn right, to that. It's much worse than that.
Sinister is a good descriptor for that.
Yeah.
I think there's kind of a scary mob mentality to his following.
I do too. I mean, but you see the same feelings on the left about, feeling as if government doesn't work for you anymore. Okay, there's a legitimate, I think, popular groundswell of that feeling that government doesn't work for us anymore. And on the left, people are gravitating towards Bernie Sanders, who is not sinister at all, whether you agree with him or don't. And on the right, they're gravitating towards a guy who really represents all of the worst instincts that the American right has ever had in the last 100 years.
Sampson, you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I actually kind of have a follow-up to that. I mean, what would you think is more likely at this point? That we elect our first socialist as president of the United States? A fascist becomes president, which I think would probably fall into that Trump line. Dr. No Little becomes our next president, being Ben Carson. Or Puerto Rico becomes statehood.
Ooh.
Wow.
I don't think Puerto Rico is really... Do they want to be a state?
They did, but... I mean, they just had a guy drop out of their governor race the other day.
Well, I'm not that up on Puerto Rico's internal politics and why they wouldn't be. I know why they wouldn't want to be a state versus becoming independent or maintaining their current status. But hey, at least if Ted Cruz's father had been born in Puerto Rico, there'd be a little less questions of his eligibility to run. But I think. I don't know if Trump is going to. There's no way he wins in November. I do think he has a chance of getting the nomination, amazingly enough. As far as Sanders is concerned, I think he's going to... People are very excited about him. And the things that he's saying are compelling. People throw around the word socialist. I don't think he's a socialist. There's a lot of different definitions to that word. And it's somewhat unfortunate that he is a victim of that, is a victim of that confusion and of those multiple definitions. But to me, I think the things that he says and the views that he expounds are exactly what people want to hear. Okay, but they're not evil. That's the difference.
Sampson, I have to commend you for bringing your A game today.
Yeah, good questions.
Course.
Maybe I should just let you take over, Sampson. That's not going to happen. Alan, how many of your 6,700 Twitter followers would you say are mortal enemies who pray that you suffer a violent, painful, and seemingly accidental death?
Number or percentage?
Percentage.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10.
That's fair.
Yeah, something like that.
You've got your Twitter game down. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
I love Twitter. Twitter's fun. It's kind of like... some people take a cigarette break during the day, and I'll take a Twitter break during the day and just check and see what's going on. And I got it on TweetDeck. I can have my Buffalo column, so I just see what people are writing about. So it's fun.
It's instantaneous. It's topical. It's of the now.
But it's also, my time is so tight lately that it's a good way for me to say things I want to say without having to do a whole blog post about it. It's also a way for me to develop ideas that I have for blog posts, or bounce ideas off of people. So, it's a good tool. I really enjoy it.
Do you have any books in the works?
No.
Any plans?
What the
for
hell would I
book
put in a book? What would I put in a book? Somebody talked to me once about, oh, you could put all your posts in a book. I was like, well, knock yourself out. They're out there. You'd put them in a book. You tell me what the hell is good. I don't know what's good. I'd put the whole thing in the book, right? I don't know.
You are a phenomenal writer.
Well, thank
I
you.
really
That's
enjoy
very
your
kind.
writing in the Public as well as on BuffaloPundit.com. In a recent column on the water quality in Flint, Michigan, you said if people sincerely want to make America great again, they need to make the middle class strong again rather than sacrifice it to appease our billionaire gods. A, billionaire gods is pretty damn catchy.
Thanks.
And B, what message would you like to send to the Madison Avenue fat cats?
The Madison Avenue Fat Cats? I don't have a problem with advertising so much. I don't have a problem with the ad world. As a matter of fact, well, I could get into that if you want. I have a bigger problem with Wall Street, and I have a bigger problem with inside the Beltway politics and the way that their information bubbles don't necessarily jibe with real people's problems. And that's bipartisan. That has nothing to do with party politics. That has to do with, I think Wall Street wields power that is far too great for what it deserves. So, not everybody gets a $3 million bonus and has a house in the Hamptons, right?
Right.
By the same token, I think people who live inside the Beltway are so wrapped up in that world that they become obsessed with it, and that world becomes their story. And the stuff that happens in places like Iowa or places like New Hampshire or places like Buffalo is really a secondary or tertiary consideration. It's kind of like, oh, all of this important stuff is happening in Washington. How's that affecting, Joe Asshole in Jerkhead, Nebraska? I don't know. Let's ask him. Let's, fly Dave Weigel out and he'll ask him. And he'll write something pithy about it.
Sampson, you come from an affluent family. Do they play the stock market?
They do, but I do like that we transitioned from Joe Sixpack to Joe Asshole. I think that's a good...
That is a nice segue.
Well, see, it depends on your outlook. See, I'm in when I said Joe Asshole, I was assuming the mantle or the character, if you will, of the Beltway person I was criticizing.
Of course.
So,
is there a wardrobe change involved with that?
I don't think so. No, it's the same outfit. It's LL Bean, or it's a combination. It's Walmart, LL Bean, sort of, Dollar Tree.
Now, how many teaspoons of cancer does it take to make a Flint, Michigan smoothie?
Oh gosh, as many as come out of the tap.
That's horrifying.
It is horrifying.
This one is going to take a little preparation, Alan.
Okay.
And the pronunciation, I tried to do some research on. Sampson, we're just going to go for it.
Yep.
Would you say that revenge is a dish best served cold?
Wow. That's just an awful pun. I'll just have to tell you that
Terrible.
right now. It's
Not
awful.
all of the jokes are going to land.
So wait a second. Is it a dish served cold? Is that what you said?
Yes.
I stopped at dish because I was like, I can't believe this is going there. Yeah. Well, no, I don't really care. Who cares? Yeah, revenge is revenge. If you could get it, get it. Who the hell gives a shit when the timing is?
I like it. I like your style.
Thanks.
This is, I might catch some heat for this one.
Okay.
How can transgender bathrooms be such a hot button issue when there are only about 5 post-op transgender individuals in our solar system, and one of them is Dr. Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
It's a big issue because it's scary to people.
I'm not against transgender
No,
people.
I understand.
The bathroom thing is driving me nuts, though.
Well, okay, so I know what you're talking about. Every single school district in New York State has had to take a look at putting forth some sort of transgender policy. And I live in Clarence. I'm very active in the school system there. Clarence had this happen. They actually passed it last month with very little fanfare. But you had parents and some non-parents come in and they were appalled that, their little kid is going to have to see a penis or something like that, an unwanted penis. Where, really, if you drill down to what the law says, what the policy would say, and what reality is, it was somewhat overblown. Like, for instance, people were complaining about bathrooms. Okay, so let's talk about it like adults would talk about it. If I was born a boy and I'm transitioning to girl and I identify as a girl and I want to use the girl's bathroom, I'm going in a stall. No one's going to see anything.
Right.
By the same token, if I was born a girl and I'm transitioning to a boy and I want to use the boys' bathroom, guess what? Physically, I have to use the stall. So who's going to see anything? So what are you complaining about? Okay, locker room's different issue. That was a little more tricky, and it needed a little bit of appeasement of, concerned parents. I buy that. I understand that. But the bathroom thing was just complete nonsense.
Sampson, where do you weigh in on that?
No, I think just the locker room thing was the only thing that threw me with that whole discussion.
You're okay with the transgender bathrooms at university where you attend?
I don't think it's a necessary thing. I think that your point of just the stalls being the main, point in this whole issue, I think makes the most sense. I mean, you're not going to have to worry about being exposed to anything you don't want to be exposed to. And in terms of being from a university, I mean, you could be a proactive university or not. I mean, these types of policies shouldn't be driving that drastic of a change. You don't need to be the engine for anything like that.
Wow.
Really, it's just guidance for the administration. If this happens, if you have a kid who identifies in this way, this is what you do. That's it. That's all it is.
Fair enough. Is there a topical ointment available for those of us who are feeling the burn?
Yeah, you could always vote for him or circulate petitions. Actually, I think petition circulation just ended, so it's too late for that. Yeah, I love Bernie Sanders. I love everything he has to say. I disagree with him on certain issues, but I think that he's really tapped into something. It's interesting that his candidacy has gained the traction that it has.
And I think you may be the only journalist in Buffalo who's willing to go out on a limb with this question.
Okay.
And I'm not referencing your earlier article on BuffaloRecord.wordpress, your archives. What else is there between the lines regarding Carl Palladino that every journalist in Buffalo is too faithful to their off-the-record credo to share?
What else is there about Carl Palladino? Oh, my God.
I think there's a lot between the lines.
There's tons of, I don't know if you're referencing, rumors about him.
As a former freelance writer, I talk to a lot of other people in the biz, and I've heard a lot of good stories, and nobody's really willing to come forward with any of them in print. Yeah,
well, there's a variety of reasons for that. I mean, obviously, there's a defamation issue at stake, and if you can't prove it up, there's really no point in publishing it. If you can't have one of the parties who was there, someone who was a percipient witness, show up and give you confirmation of something that happened, then there's no point in writing about it or talking about it. And I know that there's tons and tons of rumors about this guy that I've heard, endless ways. But I think that there's enough that the public does know about Carl Palladino that's noxious enough that you don't really need to get into the stuff that's somewhat speculative or a rumor or something that you can't confirm.
To have an impression of his character.
Yeah, he's a bad enough guy as it is. And it's interesting because he's certainly not the type of guy who would be unable to bring a lawsuit for defamation, but boy, would the discovery process be fun.
Well put. This is a serious one. One of the other components, and this is something I think about often, one of the other components to many of the mass shootings that have taken place in our country are antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. When, if ever, will Big Pharma have to answer for their part in the epidemic while everyone is screaming to regulate gun control only?
Well, that's an interesting point. I think a lot of the criticism of pharmaceutical companies is somewhat overblown. And I'll tell you why.
More of a misdiagnosis scenario?
No, I don't think it's a misdiagnosis. I think that when you have somebody who has a mental disorder, you have someone who has a mental disease. And I use the word disease specifically because it's not like, there's this stigma attached to it like it's something that people can help. And it's not something that you can help any more than you can help getting pneumonia, okay?
Right.
So if you have a kid who's, depressed or has some other sort of disease and he's being treated for it, using medication among other things, sometimes the medicines don't work, okay?
They have to cycle before they find the right cocktail.
Or maybe nothing works. Maybe for that particular kid's organism, it just doesn't work. So you will have cases, no matter what you do, no matter what interventions you put forth, there will always be people who are mentally diseased or unstable looking to do harm because they either do or don't know what they're doing. Okay?
And you don't think there's some component of over-prescribing?
It might be under-prescribing. We don't know. I mean, I think every person is different. I think every case is different. I think a lot of these people who perpetrate these particular types of mass shootings and that sort of thing are people who may have been treated in the past and are no longer being treated, or have gone off of their medication, or have never been medicated, or haven't had the proper medication, or have never had the money to go see a doctor. That's a whole other problem. When you talk about mass shootings and when people bring up, oh, well, we should do something about the mental health situation in this country. Well, that's great. I would love to do that, too. So let's have a single-payer plan, and everybody can go see a shrink whenever they need to. Oh, well, we can't do that. That's going to cost trillions of dollars. It's like, well, so did Iraq. Right. So why, if that's a problem, this is a problem. So people's priorities are just fucked up. That's all.
Absolutely. Sampson?
Well, I think really the issue is you can focus on the mental health issue, which is certainly a very real thing, and you can focus on gun control, but ultimately the people that are perpetrating these crimes, they're going to find a way to get these guns, and it's going to happen. There's a black market for all of this. There's ways under the table to get this through gun shows. So, you can eliminate the avenues of where they can, get these guns by putting in extensive checks and really tightening up the Second Amendment rights, which, I'm not here to speculate on that, but there's always going to be an avenue for this to happen, regardless of how thorough we are. I think these mass shootings are going to keep happening just because of the culture that we have right now.
Well, with guns and that sort of thing, you're right, up to a point, I think. If you look at some of the more recent mass shootings that have happened, the one in San Bernardino, I know the one in Aurora Park, those guys all bought all of their stuff. Well, not all of their stuff, but they bought their ammunition online. Right? And they bought it on the kid in Connecticut as well. They bought it on just huge amounts of just an arsenal, right? And, I think that there is a line that should be drawn by either the Congress or the people or the courts or whoever in government that would delineate, yes, you have a right to bear arms. You don't have a right to arm yourself like some small tin pot dictatorship, okay? You don't get to have...
Fair.
You don't get to have, 15 semi-automatic rifles and all the ammunition you can afford in your basement just because, for whatever reason. Because, there's a legitimate right, a legitimate Second Amendment right, but it's certainly not unlimited, just like freedom of speech is not an unlimited right. Rights are not unlimited.
Would you purchase Imax tickets for a You've Got Mail sequel starring Hillary Clinton and Tom Hanks?
No, I would not. Especially not IMAX. First of all, who would go see a movie like that in the theater to begin with? It's $10 for a ticket.
It's a lot.
The only movies worth going to pay money for in a theater are like Star Wars. Okay,
something that's the popcorn.
Well, you don't even need food. That's expensive too. That's $20 for you could feed Ghana, but when you go to a movie, if it's going to have explosions and, that kind of shit, okay, I'll pay the money for that. But if it's like a romantic comedy, you wait for that on Netflix. You don't need to go see that.
If it ever gets to Netflix.
Or whatever. You get it on iTunes.
There you go. Is it safe to say that you have the best lawyer-owned oven-baked pizza in Clarence? And would you like to give Weber a shout-out?
It's actually, Weber is only part of it.
You had the ring.
It's a Weber kettle grill, the 22-inch, and then you buy from a company called kettlepizza.com. There's an attachment that you buy that goes into the kettle.
As featured in Gusto.
Yeah, Galarno came over to the house and he had some pizza. Yeah, it's great. It's a great rig, but I want something better. I'm always on the lookout for something better.
For the Neapolitan style pie.
Yes.
The bigger, better deal.
And, by the way, the best Neapolitan pie in Buffalo comes from the back of a truck.
We only have 30 seconds, so thank you for this. Let's close out with, in a few words, is the Electoral College more important than Clowner Hamburger College?
No.
Sampson, you were fantastic. Both of you were fantastic. I wish we had another half hour, but we don't. Stay tuned for the bonus video, folks. See you in a month.